Hello, and welcome to another episode of High Leverage Actions, the podcast where we share personal development conversations, tips, strategies, and techniques to help you find your higher self. And tonight, we're going to be talking about decision making and how your head, heart, and gut feelings are integrated into helping you make everyday decisions. So, my name is Kay Reeve. I'm an emotional awareness expert. I help parents find the mentoring skills to fast forward healing in neurodivergent depression in teenagers and young adults. And this is Rory Lemon. Introduce yourself, Rory. Hi.
Hi there. My name is Rory Lemon. I go by Rory Lemonade. I am a neurodiversity and creative flow coach, and I help um, neurodiverse, heart-centered, compassionate, highly sensitive creatives get their projects out there, turning their visions into actionable projects. And it's often clearing, getting those perfectionisms, those procrastinations, and self-sabotaging behaviors that fill up the space if we're not focusing on something that we really want to do. And if we're not clear on it, then that's the thing. So clarity, vision, and action.
Wow, great. And that is a massive part of decision making. So I think today I'm going to let you kick off with some of your absolute genius wisdoms
Mhm.
because Rory is now a international bestseller since launching a new book this week. So would you like to start with a little bit about that first?
Okay. So, um, it's
Just
a,
throw you in the spot.
yeah, it's a bit, it's, I
Yeah.
haven't got a quick way of talking about this really. So, I haven't worked a quick way of saying this. So I'll just say it's a bit about coaching, and there's 23 authors, all writing a chapter in the book, curated by a lady who actually um, trains coaches in this modality of understanding the head, heart, and gut brains. Um, and she's diligently cautious about and careful about the quality of the content she puts out there. So very honored to being invited for that to represent neurodiversity, creative flow, and holistic health.
Oh, amazing. And it was launched on Friday. And by Friday night, I'd already hit number one. And from what I caught up with today, it was number one in 4 countries already.
Yes.
Unbelievable. So that is amazing. And congratulations to you and all of the other authors, Rory, because that is phenomenal. And for anybody who, as we talk a lot about neurodiversity on here, anybody who is neurodiverse and doesn't like reading, I don't know if the other authors have done the same, but for Rory, what he's done is at the end of his chapter, put a QR code. So if you don't like reading, you can skip to the end of the chapter, scan the QR code, and watch the chapter on video. That is genius in itself. I love it. And I had the opportunity to test it. It all works perfectly and it is absolutely incredible. Honestly, I was so proud of the work you put into that. It was awesome. So well
Thank,
done, Rory. So
thank you, Kay.
so
Yeah.
great to hear about Dr. Suzanne Henwood as well, who's curated the book, and you say she teaches in the head, heart, and gut. So I think that's great then that this leads in very much to tonight's topic. And this is purely, it wasn't even intended, but it just kind of was all falling into the right place with the way the conversation's been threading through the podcast in recent weeks. So perfect synchronicity tonight as well. So
Cool.
yeah.
Yeah. So, to kick it off, boiling it down to everything that we end up doing in our lives requires decisions. Everything. Because every action we even take, if we reach to pick up something, we have an intention and there's a goal attached to that action.
Oh,
Everything.
right.
So boi- boiling it down, not literally to make a cup of tea, but boiling it down, boiling it down um, to the idea that whatever we think or believe consciously, or whether it's a subconscious belief that we are not aware of. It's informing our decision making. And up until only a few years ago, it wasn't really, it's not really public domain on their it's all decision making happens in here.
Yeah.
It's based on this is the conscious mind, and that's the only way we can understand to make decisions. It's like, oh, I'm making a decision now. Everything that we put ourselves through is a decision in
Mm.
itself because whatever what we've been taught or learnt all the way through our experiences from the moment we could open our eyes and breathe, we've taken on the learnings and responses and what should or shouldn't be happening based on other people's beliefs and or societal beliefs or media beliefs or institutional beliefs. And all of this is an imprint in our brains up until right now. So my point being is that there's a head brain. The heart is now classified as a brain because it reacts and it's not on itself got the capacity to think in the same way, obviously, as such, but it informs our decision making by how we feel about things. Um, it has an emotive. It can release emotions, and it can help be part of the emotion process. Same for the gut. So the gut is a brain as well. Brains are basically um, classified as organisms, organs that have enough neural activity, brain, nervous system or neuron activity to operate on their in their own field of what they can do, and also sending and receiving information to other places. And so then it's obviously the master brain, master controller. However, or not, there's just all the stuff going on in the background to do with all the activities of what the other brains in our body are sensing in the world, and that's all thoughtless outside of the conscious mind. So whatever we're actually experiencing will be informing those decisions. They'll either be responding to something that we're deciding or have already decided, or we're trying to break a pattern and decide something new
Yeah.
in that way. So we're if we look back at something and we feel like we've made a wrong decision, it was the right decision at the time for that situation. There was no other decision.
Mm.
There was no other decision that could be made. Because that was the best decision we knew consciously and subconsciously at the time in order to run through that thing. So is only
Get in the bedroom, please, darling.
there's only one.
Sorry.
Um,
I think the
sorry.
headphones went flat. Suddenly got a lot of noise blaring out in the background. For anyone who don't, my granddaughter was watching my tablet with headphones, but I think the headphones have gone flat. Right, sorry, Rory.
All right. Um, yeah. So the point being is that all the decisions we made in the past were the best ever decision that we could ever make, uh, given the capacity. And if we look back at it and think we could made a better decision, that's the learning process. But it's only a linear process, so we've got nothing to gain by looking at a previous past decision and making it wrong.
Mm.
absolutely nothing to gain by doing that. So it's the best we could be up until now. And if we're willing to look at it and go, what can I improve upon from a learning growth mindset is is the way to really stay free flowing in this world of whether we feel like we're able to control things or not control things going
Mm,
forwards. So my point being, to boil it back down to simplicity form, what there's things that we have now or what we are where we're at now, and there's things that we may want to improve upon or change and work towards those things, and every decision comes up around that we want to move forward. So it's about being clear on what we truly want rather than just responding automatically and then looking back and going, I'm not happy with this, I'm not happy with that.
yeah. Oh, amazing. Yeah. No, well done, Rory. Brilliant introduction today. And there's so much in there, like you say, about the thought processes that are important. And I've been trying to think through it myself today in how I've kind of interpreted this. Is the thoughts are either past, present, or future. So it's memories. How did it happen before? Like you're saying, sometimes good, sometimes not so good. Sometimes it's things we're anxious about happening again. Sometimes things we want to happen again. And then sometimes there's that anxiety that these things don't happen again and we want them to. So there's all kinds of ways in that way that timeline works through the thought process. And then the decision making from there, which is the title of today's podcast, the decision making. And then the feelings, as I've been trying to understand it in myself as much this last year, because I've done a lot of work on the emotions over the last, well, lifetime on emotions, but I only recently started looking more at the head, heart, and gut. And I know I've picked a lot up from you. And then trying to integrate that with my own strategy as well as kind of what some realizations about. So when we're talking about feelings, that's what I gather is the physiological responses. Like when you either feel pounding in the chest when something scares you, or you get excited about something, or you get like a clenching sensation of like, oh no, here it comes again. And all the feelings, or sometimes you just feel really warm and open-hearted. And we talk about people who are just open-hearted and welcoming. And so I think there's a lot of things to recognize in the physiological responses, whether you feel like your throat's closing up or you're breathing fast, your hands are shaking. These are all linked to the feelings that we get. And sometimes those feelings are a lot more subtle, anxiety in the gut. So thoughts, feelings, and then the beliefs are the way which, like you're saying, you've taken information from the past, believed it to be right or wrong, and that helps us make the decisions going forward. Now, whether or not our beliefs are right or wrong is another matter. And two people could have gone through the same process in life and come up with different beliefs based on maybe one thing somebody said to each of them. And so when you understand the thoughts are what we literally are processing in our head in the moment versus the beliefs from how we've interpreted the past and believe that we should redo things or do things differently in the future, and then those feelings, it's made a lot more sense to me this last year in breaking those things down. And then the other one that I use, which is in my book, Brain Unchained, when we're talking about actions, I've actually got 4 actions. I've got action, reaction, interaction, and no action. And those are the choices. So when something changes or we want to make something change, we have those 4 choices: to take action, to interact with something, to react, which is like when something makes us jump and we're like, oh, or we take no action. And that is a decision as well, to not do anything. And the moment I actually came up with those 4 actions and taught them to my son, it made life a lot easier for him to just make those decisions in the moment and have that, realize there was a lot more choice to it. So that's as far as I've got with the head, heart, and gut, but it's definitely got me thinking and feeling a lot differently about my own reactions this last year to things from the past and how I'm moving forward. And yeah, it's powerful. And there's been a lot of change doing it. And we want to see that for other people. Right?
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Um, what I got from there was one thing I got around when you were talking about um the feelings and the thoughts. So we can tell what we all experience thoughts in different ways. So that in some ways there's categories of it though. Some people actually see words, some people just feel feelings more. So they're maybe operating more from their heart when they're sensing into how they feel about taking a decision or not. Or um and then there's this sense of um visuals as well. So visuals kind of is a connection from the head and the gut in some ways. Because the gut holds so much neurons and immune system stuff too. So it's all there to protect and either take the action on the non-action, fight or flight, through the gut energy, through the gut processing. And so and so yeah, the the yeah the point being around the fear process that comes up. I think it's important to differentiate at this point that not all anxiousness and fear relates to the truth of the feared outcome of the decision, because um we can have the fear of making a wrong decision or making a failing, taking an action whereby if we don't believe in failing and we preempt that if I take an action and it either lands the way I thought it would and I win something or do something and it goes, there's evidence for that, or if there's no evidence for that, then it's just a case of that was either factors around it that changed it, or if we test it again in another situation and it does land, then it was something to do with the situation, not the decision and the thing. But that idea that anticipating that it doesn't matter as well, to turn it into it's actually the fear of the unknown if it's to do with decisions going forwards, and it's only our past that informs whether it might do the same thing as the past or not. Um, so my point being is that being on a roller coaster, if someone didn't choose to go on the roller coaster and they were put on it, uh, uh, and they were just forced to go on it, um, how terrifying that would be. So, because it would be not a choice. Whereas as soon as someone chooses to go on a roller coaster because they love that experience of falling through the air, knowing that they're strapped in, knowing that they're safe, then they can have a really amazing experience. And enjoy the adrenaline and use it for the right reasons. It's the same as drinking a coffee. Someone might have complete anxiety coming up around something like a job interview, and yet they in the lead up, if they're not thinking about the job interview and they have a coffee and they get aroused by the coffee and get on with a bit of work when they're not thinking about the thing that they're putting all the emotional weight on, that they may win or lose, which is just not the case. Um, you can see how the fear and the anxiety might be just that it's trying to say something, and it might be that the action does get to be taken so that it can learn that it's safe to do those things, and we achieve something bigger in the long run. Or it could be that it is to take a non-action. So it's really slowing down, pausing and choosing when there's something like that going on to calm down the system and make an informed decision based on relaxation.
Yeah. No, that's really good. Yeah. Oh goodness, that's got me thinking of a few things. Something came up a minute ago for me and it's gone again. And I'm trying to think what it was now. But yeah, the coffee bit definitely. And yet at the same time, from my experience with last few years realizing I've got ADHD, I've always found that the coffee somehow triggers my brain into gear rather than me sitting there procrastinating and stuff. And I found the coffee, very often with ADHD, the coffee can drive us into thought processes that are getting stuck and overwhelmed. And it gets enough motivation going with the adrenaline going and everything that we actually finally kick into gear. But at the same time, it's still not the most effective way to handle it if we can find other ways. But that can be difficult without the diagnosis to get the right support medications. But again, your strategies are absolutely powerful at managing that process. But when we're coming back to the bits about the feelings again, the head, heart, and gut, there's some really interesting stories behind this, because I know a lot of people might find it difficult to comprehend thinking from 3 different regions of the body. And yet, I mean, as far as when I was little, I remember people saying, oh, come on, use your head, or follow your heart, or what are your gut feelings? So all my life, I've heard people saying these, and yet it's only in the last sort of probably 5 years or so that we've really heard about those. Actually, no, I think it was about 7 or 8 years ago, I first heard about the heart and the gut having the brains. And I instantly said, and I had a conversation, and it's on one of my podcasts from about 4 years ago. I talked to another Rory, actually, another guy, it was Rory Berry. And we were don't know why I can remember that from 4 years ago. We talked about the head, heart, and gut. And I said, I wouldn't be surprised if there are not neurons also linked in all 7 chakras, because all 7 of them can have a physiological response to whatever stimuli is going on. Like we get angry. I tend to find if I get angry with something, I get a real restriction here. I get a lot of sensation here in the front of my throat. But at the same time, a lot of doctors these days will also say if you've got gut issues, oh, it's all down to mental health. So they will instantly say, if you're not thinking right, that's why you've got gut issues. So they're kind of tagging on to this concept of head, heart, and gut being linked to thought processes. And sometimes it can be right, but sometimes it can be wrong. And with me, it was massively the wrong information and back to front, because it turned out that I actually had a massive amount of food allergies. And I was looking at a picture the other night of when I had my testing done, and I had the test done down my arm. And the tiniest little drop of oil with a pinprick over 2 days kept spreading to create a big wheal on my arm. And it was the tiniest drop of oat oil. Now, if that could keep spreading and creating inflammation on my arm for 2 days before it finally stopped and began to settle, you imagine how my gut felt every day when I was eating things like flapjacks and porridge and whole wheat breads and things like this. So no wonder my gut felt so inflamed and painful. And then my gut was interpreting that as pain and anxiety and feeding back to my anxiety the other way around. But it was just that realization the other day about looking back at the allergy results on my arm, because I took a photograph while I was sitting in the hospital. It's not a pretty photograph at all. It's like biro and big red blotches everywhere. But it was just that thought, yeah, if that inflammation could be that profound from one little pinprick on my arm, what was the food doing to my gut, and how was that affecting my mental health? And the other option for thinking about this is alcohol, how that affects our head, heart, and gut feelings quite massively, quite a small amount sometimes, depending on who's drinking it. So there is a lot in there when we talk about nutrition as well, and food and substances and all sorts that can affect this. It's finding a way through all of the chaos of whatever your own body is as well, and what your own body reacts to. And, some people can drink red wine, some can drink white and they don't do the other. And some don't drink at all. I mean, I very, very, very rarely drink anyway, but There is so much involved in how we end up having these feelings that can be overlooked. So yeah, it's been a lot of reflection this week thinking about this one.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, it's really fascinating.
I've just
And
remembered.
the what? Hmm?
So I've just remembered what I was going to say earlier. Sorry, when you were saying about societal beliefs and building up what we take action on, and I was actually thinking back to watching my grandchildren, or when they're little, and watch children when they're little. And if a child sees like ice cream or something and they want to get it, they don't stop and think. They just act on whatever their heart tells them. Oh, I love ice cream, or their gut tells them, I love ice cream, and they just run towards it. But society, like you say, we have to teach them, like, what if that ice cream van is the other side of a road? Stop, it could be dangerous. Look before you cross the road, and so on. And so we have to teach children to stop following their heart and their gut and actually start using their head. And by the time they've come out of the education system, this bit is so driven in. I think that's where they start to forget or don't understand how to follow the others. And so I think that's quite a gradual transition. But when you think of a child up to the age of 2 or 3, they don't have that thought process. They purely react on whatever their body desires, their heart desires, and they just go for it.
Yeah, love
That
it.
you want to get some of those feelings back without going back to being 3-year-olds.
Yeah, totally. It's yeah, that's I agree with that. It's just a case of reigniting and recharging the batteries on all these brains, and so it's starting to associate which decisions to make with which brain, or at least check all three with bigger decision making processes. Um, and that's the processes that I like to help people with is to um,
Yeah,
slow them down. Imagine what the day could be like. It doesn't. Sometimes it just doesn't. Some people, might be like, I don't have time to, sit and meditate for half an hour. Um, well, what if you could get twice as much work done in half the time because the decision-making processes were much clearer because of that half an hour spent mentally rehearsing and planning the day, getting half an hour's less sleep in order to have less stress throughout the whole day, get things done quicker, be non-attached to so much ramped up confusion and chaos, stressful situations that are made up. Um, how we react to particular thing. So non-reactive, faster cognition speed, already planning out what's going to move most leverage of the work done in less time, and then maybe have like being able to then carve out that what that leverage is. It leverages more health, more opportunity to do more valuable work, to create more money, to then have more time off. It's like one little focus on one thing can shift so much other stuff. So it's like working on the principles and decision making processes and learning about that is what's changed my life so much. And the word inertia comes up. I like the word inertia because I don't know whether I mentioned this in one of the previous ones or not, but like if there's a whirlpool going round and it's like spinning and like if you get like two people in a tub that's circular and you walk really fast and then you suddenly try to walk the other way, suddenly like all this water's pushing you. It's a really really strong field trying to carry on going that way because momentum's going that way. That's really what our belief systems are like, even though we can't see them or physical them. So if we try to go against something that we're subconsciously so used to doing, it's gonna feel like it's gonna feel like the opposite of what we want, which is it's gonna be a feeling challenging to try to slow that down and do something different. And
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
so that's my point being that so if there's a heart and a head and a gut reaction to something and it's learned a certain way, we can get addicted to those thoughts of, oh, I never have a good time when it rains, or can't, I'm not good at doing this. Yes, you may not be good at doing it to the level that you perceive yourself as, and yet someone that may have never attempted it, or is a 2-year-old, wouldn't even consider whether it's um good or not. We just try it out and then get bored of it if it's not something you want to be doing, you know. And that sense of inertia of comparing ourselves whilst doing is what the brain wants to do, because that's what we've learned, the inertia of comparison. We need comparison, we need it in our lives, but comparison is not good or bad. Comparison is like, this is day or night. Night is good because it's a replenishing time for nature and the earth and energy and all this stuff. And then um and daytime is good for, doing and being and getting on with things. So but if we were just doing, it was always daytime, we would not know what the difference was.
Hmm.
Uh so coming back from a tangent there, but that inertia of belief systems, that's why a habit it's not about trying to change it all at once, and it's not about um uh sort of ignoring it either. So it's that thing of just knowing that every single time we do something again, we've learned something slightly more ingrained about it. So if there's negative beliefs or negative addictions to decision making processes, that's all it is a case of focusing and doing a little bit often, a little often.
I really, really like that, Rory. And that analogy is really powerful, actually, because we talk about emotions as flowing like water. And I like that analogy of stirring, even just a bucket, stirring that water, and it goes with the flow. So if this is the way you're doing it, this is the way the energy goes with you. But then you think, well, actually, should I be doing it this way? Maybe I need to be doing it that way. And like you said, even just stirring water and turning that, you get that resistance, and it's harder work to start with, and you're going against the flow until you push through enough that then the energy in the water actually turns and follows you the other way. And
Yes.
that's powerful. I like that.
And yeah, and and the other thing is that just because it feels strong, who's to say that doesn't feel good? Just because it's like, oh, the challenges of changing things. It's only learnt if like, oh, I'm having anxiety right now. That means it must be bad because it's fear, but it's not. It's just a signal. And what if it's the roller coaster you've been waiting for all your life?
I hate roller coasters. I got a very funny story. Daughter that why she hates roller coasters, even more than I do. But no, I get that, and certainly when it comes to challenges, there are some people who are like they don't like that resistance of a challenge or a change, and sometimes that's especially with certain neurodiversities like autism. Change can be an overwhelming resistance, so then it's not always a good thing to change when people are on the more affected end of autism. And there are people who it's like everything has to be done very routine, no change. I know we did a routine versus variety episode a few weeks back. Um, but then there are those people who thrive on change and challenge, and they're the problem solvers in life. So even this is not right or wrong, it depends on the individual's skill, the individual's resilience and ability to cope with change. And some people cannot cope with a life that doesn't change, whereas others can't cope with a life that does. So it is down to knowing yourself as well, really genuinely, which way works best for you. And even then, being change and challenge and problem solving driven doesn't mean that we don't sometimes need those times where we have a break and don't burn out, like you say, because I've experienced the burnout and it's horrendous because I had a job where it was all change all the time, every day. I never knew what I was doing from day to day. And I was always problem solving. That was my job, was problem solving. And it did get to a point of burnout after a few years. But yeah, I'm going to have to throw this one in quickly. Talking about change, night and day, light and dark. My daughter, she's going to hate me for this, but my daughter went to bed one night when she was about 4 years old, and she decided she wanted to put the light on. It was too dark. She wanted the light on. But rather than put the bedroom light on, she tried putting on the light at the top of the stairs, but she couldn't reach. So this is where we're talking about creating change. Can't reach. So what do we need to do? She needed to get higher. That was the change. So she got her toy pram, put it in front of the light switch, climbed in it to reach the switch. And she said, she told me, as I reached, I realized it was too late. Now, from downstairs, my husband and I then, we're just sitting there minding our own business, and we heard this boom, 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 and thought, and it was so funny. We both looked at the telly thinking it was EastEnders on. We both looked at the clock as if to say it's the wrong time. And then we both looked at the door at the bottom of the stairs, and then we both ran to find her sprawled at the bottom of the stairs with the legs up and the pram on top of her. Anyway,
Wow.
I went to pick her up and she screamed. I was like, oh. So I went to pick her up again. She screamed again. And then I'm thinking, actually, perhaps we better put the light on, because she never quite got to the light switch. And so we put the light on and realised I couldn't pick her up and she's screaming because I was standing on her hair. And to this day, she hates roller coasters. There we go. but that's because of that experience. And we still laugh about and joke about it as a family. It's a big thing. But when we talk about where fear comes from, it could have been something a lot more simplistic than that. And my granddaughter today has randomly told me she has a fear of scissors, and I haven't worked that one out yet. There's one to dive into, a fear of scissors. So I have no idea what's behind that. But how we get those fears, anxieties, and barriers put up over the years. And yeah, we did try taking my daughter on a small roller coaster once and never again. It did not go well. But yeah, that was, but that, it's just a relevant story, I suppose, in a way, as to how that does build up from something in life. And I think actually that also brings us around to Emma, who's part of the self-help bookshelf, who is a trauma therapist. And she's very, very good at unearthing things that are deep-seated traumas from the past. And so is Rory as well through, I think the next one to bring on to is your somatic healing. I think that would be a good one to bring in today as well. Are you up to a bit about that?
Today,
Yeah, just to explaining that, because you do a lot of work with the head, heart, and gut.
yeah, I think maybe we could talk about another time.
Okay, glad.
Only because, I just feel like it's the shorter they are, the more people can watch them. It can go
Yeah,
too much too soon. But yeah, I think the idea of, like, I was just about to say, look, I've got one last thing I could round it up with,
yeah,
but there's other things you want to say. I was just thinking that's might go off on a tangent. Whereas if we talk about decision making, um, so I just wanted to round back up around the ideas of picking. Say there's something you want to do tomorrow, and there's a particular thing that wants to be getting to be done, and preemptive work is useful
hmm,
to choose um what what decision, rather than like trying to decide what is wanted and just assuming that you'll do it, or it's not you but as in the person. Say me, I'll talk about from my perspective. So tomorrow, if I want to get something done, I won't necessarily think I just want to get that done. I'll go at that point where I want to decide to get that thing done. What will I do to make that thing desirable enough to get done so that I don't pick something else? Well, this is like getting into like how to manage more ADHD style stuff because the mind moves really fast. There's lots of options. It's consistently divergent thinking is like to look at options and explore things, whereas that's not necessarily useful when trying to converge on a particular action and stay focused on it. So the only way that worked out how to do that is to mentally take myself to the future point where I imagine myself taking that action and also what potential reward or action I will take after I finished it so that I'm stacking two actions on top of each other so that even if that action at the other end, after finishing that task, um, is not a desirable one. It's not like, oh, I'm going to reward myself with like a treat, but it's just so that I know that I'm what I'm doing after the task that I want to get done is in hand and getting done. So that as I'm focusing on it, I know that there's an what at the end of that task looks like so that I can move on to another one. And actually that decision making process becomes desirable. That productivity in itself becomes desirable. It doesn't actually matter what the actual task is because it could be something else, but it just for some reason that really helps me to decide and stick to something that I want to do by having something else in mind. Not lots of things. Not a to-do list will completely destroy me. So I can only think of one task and then another one afterwards. But that really works for me.
No, it's really great. And I get that because I get completely overwhelmed with so many things that in the end I have to get it out of my head and on paper. And I literally like I sit here and I make lists up, like I get stuff written all over bits of paper and I have to follow through tick lists and write things down and literally mind map stuff out to go, right, okay, now I know why I'm overwhelmed. Now pick one thing and then gradually I'll tick things off and cross them off the list. But if I don't do that, I'm like you say, just mental scatter. But it does work. But no, thank you ever so much, Rory. That's great today. Really good conversation again.
Yeah, cool.
Oh, love it.
Brilliant. Is there anything else you want to reflect on or share before?
Um, I think we've done really well today again, and I think it's just deciding where we're going to go with it next, really. What's the next action or decision that we're going to make on what we're going to talk about next week?
Yeah,
But yeah, maybe healing would be a good one because
healing massive. Yeah,
yeah,
massive.
we've had some really good conversations about things that bring things up and how to go up against a lot of emotional challenges. And I think a little bit healing would be a really nice one to bring in at this stage. So,
Yeah, yeah.
right.
Okay, cool.
Right, we'll see you all. Thank you for watching today. Yet another amazing episode of High Leverage Actions, where small personal development strategies and conversations help you find your higher self. And next week, talking about healing.